Kira and Turquoise, I see you. Thank you for joining a little bit early. We're going to get started momentarily as soon as our panelists join us. I'm going to get Instagram Live going as well. Hey, Iffy, thank you for joining us. I'm checking in on Ebony and Jean, and we'll get started momentarily.
Sounds good.
Of course, Young Turk is already in the building.
That's funny.
Iffy, I'm going live now. Hey, good people, thank you all for joining. We're going to get started promptly at 6:05. Where's your team?
David?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and see you.
Thank you, Di. I'm waiting for somebody to respond.
I was waiting for our young brother G, and I'm gonna try and tap in Iffy on live as well. Eugene, you're supposed to be on Zoom, brother, not just on live. Right, this is what happens when you try and do too much at the same time.
So Dave, Did I just go to my live? I'm not.
No, stay exactly where you are because there are a number of people that have joined us for here just for this, but I want you to be on live as well.
Right. Should I join yours or should I just be on?
No, join mine. People that have joined us for here just for this, but I want you to be on live as well.
Right. Should I join yours or should I just be
on? Right there. Okay, here we go. Here's Iffy. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, here's Jean.
Jesus.
All right, good people. So I want to first and foremost say thank you to everybody who's joined us. Time is the most precious resource you have. It's the one that you can't get back. And so again, I want to thank you for that. I also want to acknowledge that we're doing a little bit of pivoting. A lot of folks who read my post today know that my response to how are you doing during this pandemic has been pivoting and plotting. And we planned a week ago to have a conversation about digital storytelling, knowing that there are a number of folks who are using this time to either establish or level up their digital brand, but acknowledging what has happened within the last 24 hours. Live lynchings of Black bodies. I still struggle just to wrap my head around the reality that our brother was murdered 2 months ago, and nothing has happened still. And so we wanted to pivot and to provide space not only to answer the questions that existed a week ago, but to also talk about what might be brewing today. We have until 7. I've invited a couple of friends who are experts in this space to help us walk through this. But I want us to, first and foremost, before we do anything else, just have a moment of reflection. A moment of reflection for all of the lives lost, both as a result of the coronavirus, but also as a result of white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and our inability to deal with the vestiges of transatlantic enslavement. So if we could just have a moment of reflection, I would appreciate it. Thank you for that. I know that silence is a little different digitally than it is in a room where we're all together, but I appreciate you all and indulging me in that. So I'm joined on Zoom by 2 of my good friends and colleagues in the work, and I encourage you all to read their bios, as I'm not going to use the time to do that. But for those who don't know, Iffy Ike has done a number of things, including building campaigns designed to respond to the needs of communities that are often most neglected and ignored, including New York City Men's Teach, a mental health initiative focused on African Americans, brothers and sisters thrive in New York, and a number of other projects. You should all be aware of what she's doing with her company, Pink Cornrows, and the Black Policy Lab, including we're partnering together to launch a survey to collect data on the experiences of Black people affected by COVID. So look out for more information on that. Eugene, who goes by the moniker Groovy Gene, is a social entrepreneur whiz kid. He's responsible for helping Angela Rye build her digital platform, also helping to build the blueprint for impact strategies, and is now helping to guide the NAACP in responding to opportunities to ensure that all Black people can be free. So I have a couple of questions, really 2 framing questions. There were 3 that were submitted by folks who registered for this chat. And then I will open it up to folks who either want to join us on camera or who want to type in their questions. Encourage folks on both platforms to send in their thoughts and to join in whatever way makes sense for you. My first question, again, acknowledging this moment and thinking about our brother who was murdered by 2 white men who are still walking free right now. When we think about storytelling and content creation, for both of you, what's most important? I guess rather, what's shaping how it is that you approach the work at present? Why don't we start with you, Iffy, and then Jean, why don't you tap in?
So good evening, everyone. I know some people are saying there's some Teddy Riley stuff going on.
Turn your cell phone, turn the cell phone volume down. I'm sorry, I told you wrong.
No, it's all the way down and it's still,
Keep going.
okay. I think that's a little better. Um, so, so the first thing that I think is really important is if you, especially if you're in the space of translating for other communities, and I think that's the way we should look at each other, is as translators. Um, all of us have been impacted differently by the resharing of our bodies, being killed, being dragged, um, being impacted uh, by um, different forms of violence that have happened towards our bodies. I say all that to say that I'm a believer that there are different ways of storytelling that do not require us always to show our bodies in that manner. Um, I think there are some individuals and organizations that have also shared the times when that has been impactful. Emmett Till's um, murder is one of those revelatory moments that was transformational on multiple levels. So I enter into this by saying that I think the first is identifying your storytelling voice and also recognizing your lane. So I'm not in judgment of how others share, especially in the last 24 hours, what has happened. Uh, I also recognize that, and we talk about this a lot, David, that in this moment, there are also a lot of people that are passing that we don't know their names, especially in light of other forms of discriminatory violence and also COVID, which even though it is not, it in itself is not a discriminatory illness, the responses to it have also been discriminatory and have impacted lives in ways that are ravishing communities that we don't even discuss. So to answer that with that framing, to answer that question, I guess the approach that our team has taken, especially as we are supporting other organizations tell that story, is number one, to not ignore it. I think however people shared it, whether they wanted to share the video or whether they wanted to tweet or do a hashtag, I think it's important that we all come to a full stop and acknowledge the moment. And as far as how to keep the story moving, I do think that individuals should again think about what do we want to get as a response from individuals that are in power. So I do think that for those that are concerned about how do we keep this sustainable and how do we bring in more people, but also how do we get the responses that we're looking for? I think one of the things that could really be helpful, and I would love to hear Jean's take on this, is A, support the organizations that are already doing reshare that information, especially when action items are connected to it. Part of the story of those in the past, whether it's Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, is that the actions are also a part of the story. So even at this moment where we are limited from where we can go physically, that doesn't mean we're limited as far as action. So that's number one. Number two, I do think that we struggle a little bit with making sure that we are inclusive of other spaces and places and people that are not getting the same space and attention as individuals that have a hashtag. So for those that are able to balance different realities, I do think it's important to also talk about how there are parallels between communities that are also impacted at this time. And then finally, I do think like we're doing here, being spontaneous, being agile, equity often calls for us not necessarily to be right, but to be clear, and being clear that this is a moment that deserves a pause, that we should not be ashamed for wanting to activate. And I've actually been seeing a lot of, I hate to say it, shaming of folks that are like a hashtag is not going to do anything, or sharing stuff is not going to do anything, marching is not going to do anything. I'm actually going to say, fuck all that. We don't have time for that. All of those things are actually important, and how people enter into this space is also a part of the story. And any tools we can provide individuals, whether through digital toolkits or things that are accessible beyond just reports, we should find ways to incorporate other people's narratives and their reflections to be a part of the storytelling. So those are just some top line thoughts that I've been having and struggling with.
No, I appreciate that. I also appreciate the reminder to start with a goal in mind or the end in mind when thinking about developing a campaign. Jean, let's tap you in. How are you thinking about this, both as it relates to your role in offering strategic guidance to the NAACP, one of our community's legacy civil rights organization, as well as how you're thinking about applying it to other brands that you're helping to build and manage?
So the NAACP just launched a campaign called We Are Done Dying. And we were, working on it in response to COVID-19, just equitable relief in regards to COVID-19, understanding the old wise saying that when America has a cold, Black America has pneumonia. And so we were coming from that perspective. And then, Ahmaud's murder video happened, and it was like, oh my God, like, we got Trump in the White House. We've got a environmental situation that most of us, I would dare to say all of us, have never seen before. And then on top of that, we still gotta deal with just being Black. I think that it was just, one, a reminder that when the disease or the virus is gone, the pandemic of being Black in America will still exist. And so we have that, and We Are Done Dying as a campaign, one, to just loudly say, like, yo, enough is enough. And to the person shaking their head right now saying, we said enough was enough with Trayvon. We said enough was enough with Tamir Rice. We said enough was enough with Sandra Bland. I'm from New York. I remember Amadou Diallo and how that shifted the city. Like, to that person, yo, I agree. I completely agree that we have said enough is enough time after time after time. But when can we afford to stop saying it, right? And so to the last point, as you figure out a way to activate in your social space, for me, it's healthy to stay angry. Like, understanding that, taking off the work cap, I'm a Black man in America, and David knows me very well from a little brother perspective. Like, I be with the smoke. Like, I'm like, look, how do we want to handle this? And depending on my friend circle or which friend circle I'm in that day, how we handle it is two different things. I think the most shocking thing for me in this moment was finding out actually earlier today that this incident happened over 2 months ago. Like, this isn't something that just happened and went viral. This is something that started before the quarantine, and these cats ain't in jail yet. That's a father and a son outing. That's what it looked like to me. You know what I mean? Like a father and son hunting trip, and we as Black folks were the prey. So it just it shifted me. And then also finding out, because the world that we live in, everything is on camera nowadays. But finding out that the person filming was with them, and so it's like, you were expecting something to happen because the child wasn't dangerous, but you knew your guys had guns and anticipated something that was worth filming. And just hearing that today, and shouts out to Jermaine Dupri, who did a whole video talking about, a lot of the stuff that we didn't know about that situation. It just got me angry again. And for me, I appreciate all the people that work in policy spaces who are trying to get things like this handled from a government perspective. I appreciate, especially working with the NAACP, I appreciate everybody that is doing boots on the ground work and voter registration work and census work, because all of that affects these kind of situations, whether people know it or not. Census affects these kind of situations. Voting and voter registration affects these kind of situations. I respect them and I honor them and I thank them for what they're doing. As David would say, period, full stop. But I also come from the perspective of this thing, this machine that we're caught in, that we often say is broken, is working perfectly fine for the people it's supposed to work for. And we're not that group of people. So yes, we've been saying enough is enough, but we as a collective have to shift the way that we operate in order to say enough is enough without using the words. I've been preaching and I've had conversations with David about this and Charlemagne and Angela and all, like, yo, let's get that segregated mindset back for a second. Let's buy everything Black. Let's support everything Black. Let's invest everything Black. Let's pool Black capital and say, okay, we got this on our own. The oppressor, the enemy, whatever you want to call that opposition, is more likely to come to the table as an equal when they feel like the other person isn't equal. I'm done asking. And so with my work and what I do with social strategy, it's getting to the point where it's like, either you're going to do it or it's going to get done. However that works, we are not in a position where we can bargain with lives. Like it just is what it is. So you've got to have those people operating from a policy standpoint. You've got to have those people operating with boots on the ground. But now it's time to bring in all of these other folks, and especially like our high wealth individuals in our community, and say, okay, where's the financial pivot? And using social media campaigns and just online strategy to not only engage them, but put them in a seat where Black Twitter, which is one of the most powerful things on the planet, can say, what are you doing? Holding each other accountable and really moving the needle on this thing and getting things done.
So let's stay in this space a little while longer before we move to some of these tactical questions. I'm thinking about, in reflecting upon what you both said, Brian Stevenson, who said some time ago that we should acknowledge that the system works exactly as it's designed to. And then Yoli wrote in the chat, James Baldwin's reminder of to be a Negro in this country is to almost always be in a constant state of rage. The question that I have thinking about the space that we're in and the foundation that you both provided is twofold. One is, how do you answer the question, what should people be doing generally, but specifically with their platforms now? And then how does one balance, right? Gene, to your point, it knocked the wind out of me yesterday when I learned that Ahmaud was shot 2 months ago, right? It was last night, and it was in part what prevented me from sleeping, learning that the video was captured by somebody who was in collusion with the murderers. That was also problematic. And thinking about that and the project of racial justice as an enduring one for Black folks, and maybe COVID in this moment being something that's more immediate and short term, and all of us not being able to find ways to exploit the clock like Beyonce does, how does one balance showing up and contributing to these larger social challenges, if at all?
So for me, I think that we rarely get an opportunity to operate in our gifts, most people, right? Most people operate from a survival standpoint. You go to work, you do what you pay the bills, you got a job that you hopefully can retire from and collect some Social Security and whatever. And I thank God that I am in a place where I'm operating in my gifts. This is what I love to do, and then figure out ways to use that to help. And so my mom, for example, my mom has sewed my whole life, right? And, you know, getting older, kind of got out of it. This happens, and she hits me up super excited, like, I'm selling masks. People need COVID masks. I'm making masks and selling masks. And it dawned on me at that point, it was like, man, Black folks are, one, so resilient, but two, when needed, can turn on that God-given thing and figure out a way to help and figure out a way to pitch in. And I think that we have to get to the place where we're operating at that level at all times. And so, you can post a picture, repost a picture, retweet something, jump in on the hashtag, but also provide whatever your gift is in that space. And so if you're a person who, and because we're quarantined and we're talking social and digital specifically, if you're a person that is a great listener, right? Like that, I'm not, but there are some people who are just amazing listeners. Offer your ear, offer your space, jump on an IG live and say, hey, I say this specifically to Black men, we often don't have safe spaces to talk. So it's been a part of my thing lately just to say, yo, I'm a safe space. Come to me, we can talk about whatever, we can figure it out, because you deal with the situation in what's going on, and specifically with the Ahmaud situation, but it's also like thinking about the trauma that all of this is causing to people. I just saw something that said, expect the suicide rates to jump in the next 3 weeks. Like this is, you know what I mean? And so that's a real thing that we have to deal with. That's a reaction to what's happening. So just offer that. If you have an opinion, offer it. This is the perfect time to say what you got to say. Speak your mind and be open to that dialogue and that conversation. Learn something. Like, we are, this is a headline generation. You see a headline, you think you know the entire story of what happened. And that's very rarely the case. And so it's like, in this space and time right now, especially while we're quarantined, use your digital platform to engage with folks, check on your weak friends, check on your strong friends, check on the introverts and the extroverts, like, and really offer whatever your gift is. If you doing, like I got a whole bunch of friends, if you're doing hair and makeup, do that, throw that online. And in it, you can offer little messages on how you feel and, you know, and sentiments on what's going on, but you're still operating in that gift. And I think we had a brief conversation earlier about are we still gonna do this today because of what this moment is? And I'm like, yo, we got to. If I don't get a chance to do things like this, I'm in here with my own thoughts. And right now, that is a super dangerous place to be, because I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. And I'm diving into my faith and praying and trying to figure it out. But it's like, because I can't necessarily see that light yet for the larger community, I am offering my talents. You want to talk social media? Let's do it. You want to talk digital strategy? Let's do it. And we can infuse the reality of the situation, but not block off the lines of communication.
Yeah, Ify, I saw your head shaking. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I'm in alignment with a lot that's been stated. You know, as you know, I fall into a couple different spaces. Some spaces it's social impact communication. Other spaces it's EDI training. Other spaces is policy, which kind of speaks to right now, part of what's fatiguing us is that there are so many tentacles that actually need to be activated at the same time. It can feel daunting as to which one should I be focused on, especially if you are a multi-potentialite, which is how I consider myself, right? You can be pulled in so many different directions, but where in a moment, we all have purpose and multi-purposed and are multi-purpose people. We're also multilingual people. And I think that one of the things that I would love for us to discuss, as Jean was sharing, is how do we not feel like we have to be all things to all people, right? But through coordination, can we figure out when those moments are when we can step in to offer that support for individuals that need that one-on-one you know, whether it's TA support, that ear, but then also recognize that part of the frustration of this moment is that people want action. People want action, people want impact, people want change. And so, you know, Jean was talking about how we influence people in kind of like the upper tier of especially resources and economics, which is important because when we think about what does that collective strategy look like, we also have to talk about what does it look like to sustain a lot of the efforts that we're discussing, and who right now, with no judgment of how they got there, because we don't have time for that, who right now is in a position to kind of take on certain types of efforts because they have the resources. David, as you know, I'm also very much invested in the wealth of everyday people, right? How, you know, on my Twitter, I've changed my name. My name is now Essential Worker's Daughter, right? Because regardless of being an attorney or being in certain spaces, I have a mother who's a nurse, I have a dad that works security, a sister who's a social worker. So when we talk about what it means to be Black at this moment, and we have people talking to us about quarantine your family, go in a separate room to be separate from the rest of your family, newsflash, in a lot of homes, that's not possible, right? So there is also a disconnect as to how even the individuals that are well-intentioned and individuals that aren't even mean-spirited, there's just lack of cultural spirit. How can we use this moment to, again, translate different ways of being, not just for survival, but hopefully to transcend into thriving, right? Into thrival. I remember I said that last time, David. How do we get into thrival? Because at the end of the day, in a space where a system was never designed for you, but also was specifically designed to oppress you, it can't always be about fitting within the machine. It actually has to be at some point about destroying something. Something has to get undone. And that includes our behaviors and our mindset. So I actually encourage that another way of looking at how we recognize inequity within our own community is also flipping and reversing power. How is it that those that have better platforms, bigger platforms, better is relative, but bigger platforms, what are they doing to ensure that essential workers are having a space? What are they doing to ensure that, I think I found out from you, David, that 30% of the restaurant industry encompasses of queer individuals that work in the restaurant industry? I had no idea. So what does that mean at this moment when people are trying to figure out what their economy is going to be like, or what their bank situation is going to be like, and what could it look like for somebody who's a high net worth earning influencer to provide that platform for that one skill that that person had that nobody knew that they had, right? So this is a moment to get really creative on a personal level. On the macro level, I do think we need to think about how we push the levers of power, but we also need to think creatively outside of just Congress and even just state and local officials. I think we have to also incorporate what community policing looks like, if we think that that's even a solution, what community safety looks like, which is a completely different conversation and one that I'm leaning more towards, that doesn't require the police. But at times when we need justice to step in, we also need to remember that whether we like the police or not, we also pay for the police, and we pay salaries for public elected officials. We pay for the DA to not charge those individuals with the hunting and the profiling and the killing that they engaged in. So I do think we have to have a different conversation of a both and. We need a different system, and if we pay for this, there is a certain form of justice that shouldn't be negotiated. And I think we can use our digital spaces to create that crowd of understanding, so that it's not just the same voices that are speaking for us, but that we are speaking collectively, regardless of socioeconomic status and title and where we're at. So it's a both and, but I do think that right now, unfortunately, we are in a space where we are coming together at times that feel familiar. I'm gonna keep saying that there are also individuals that we do not raise as in the same form of organizing. So I also think this is a moment where we talk about women who are suffering from pregnancy right now as they're dealing with COVID, some of which have died, the imbalance of nurses that are predominantly women that are in the workforce, and then of course the countless homeless children and those that are in jail, those that are in spaces that we don't even see on a day-to-day, that also have been dying, that do not have a hashtag. There's gotta be something that we do with our spaces that is inclusive of those bodies and of those individuals, while also elevating the well-needed justice for Sean Reed and for Ahmaud Arbery. So I could keep going, but that's.
No, let's, I was checking to see if Ebony, some of you who might have signed up early and are wondering who's here and what shifted, will acknowledge that I invited a colleague and friend, Ebony Thompson, who runs the Persona Agency. She's responsible for the digital management of all things related to National Justice Coalition, to join us as well. I was checking to see if she was on hand because I have a couple of micro specific questions that people submitted before this week happened. And so I want to run through those, but want to see if she's able to join us as well. So the first question is, what kind of budget does one need in order to reach a large audience digitally? That was how the question was submitted. And I would also ask you in your brief response to maybe even talk a little bit about how you think about an audience and how people who are building or growing their brands should be thinking about an audience as well. And then related to that, what tips or tools or recommendations do you have for individuals who are looking to scale their branding presence exponentially? The specific question was about doing it in a short amount of time. So what would you recommend for somebody to do within a month to have optimal impact?
So in regards to the first question with the budget question, I think that so applying money to your social engagement is hit or miss. It's not always, to me, it's not always the best way to go about things. Especially if you're like selling a product, I take a very street team approach to that. Who has your product and who is able to speak on behalf of your product is so much more impactful than how much ad buys, you know what I mean? Like how much dollars you can put into actually pushing out your social. So I just wanted to drop that in there in regards to how much money, because people will just
say back to you what I think I hear you saying that, like, if you're going to make an investment, invest it in validators and people that can speak to the quality of whatever the product is, you or what you're producing, not ad buys. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Yes,
Let's tap
specifically
in.
If you're selling a product.
If what?
I said specifically if you're selling a product, like if there's something attached to what you're pushing out, if somebody is purchasing something or investing in something, it's more important to have those validators versus if you're pushing out a campaign and you just need more eyeballs or more link clicks. So just making that distinction.
No, I appreciate the clarification because I was going to say before that I thought Ebony might have a different thought. Ebony, let's tap you in. Again, remind everyone that Ebony runs the Persona Agency based in Atlanta, Georgia.
So yeah, I'm going to double down on what Jean said, is that the biggest mistake that I've always seen is that it's a couple fold to it. Especially like the likes, and I just saw somebody in the chat say organic basically overpaid. And that's the thing right now. We're in the era where you can buy your way almost into anything, and you can buy your way into like the perception of greatness and of my product being awesome. But at the end of the day, what's going to solidify a lasting relationship with somebody on social, off social, is going to be an authentic relationship. And I think that it goes so much further than how many followers do you have, because it doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers if you can't get 500 followers to do something. And so that, doubling on what he said, is that it's so much more important to build the relationship on the ground level, because if you have that ground level, and I'm gonna quote Super Scent, and I love Super Scent for how she has built her platform up. she has built up from really, I mean, waitressing, from cleaning hotels, and now she has those people who have rode with her from the bottom. And I think a lot of brands right now want to get to that really quickly, but that's not an overnight thing. And that's one of those things where, I mean, you could throw $1 million at it and people will still see through that, and they won't do anything. They won't act on that because they feel like you're trying to buy me. It's not an authentic, you're not even interested in what I do, what I like, who I am, the language I speak. You're just trying to buy your way into my wallet. And I always have these conversations with my clients, especially the clients who are in the e-commerce space, is that don't get caught up in the numbers. Don't look at, I want to get to 1 million followers. Don't look at my competitor has 500 likes and I have 20, because let's look at the back end of it. Are you selling products? Are you selling more products than your competitors? Because if you are, you're doing better. It's just the perception of it. So to answer your question, I would think that figuring out, working your way backwards, figuring out what your audience is, who they are, what they like to do, how they talk, where they spend their time, and really trying to nurture that relationship organically, because people are not here for the, sorry for anybody who's a Kim Kardashian fan, people are not here for those type of interactions anymore. Like it's not authentic. If I'm going to spend my money with somebody, I'm going to spend my money with somebody that looks like me, that talks like me, that understands what I go through, and it's not just trying to take my $25 for lips, for lip gloss, and you don't even care any of the struggles that I have going on in my life. And that's what that's where I'm at right now. I will gladly shell out $40 for a lip gloss that I can probably get for $5 from the Koreans or the other people, because I want to give to people who are trying to build up in the same way that I am. So hopefully that answered the question, because I feel like I kind of
definitely think it does, and if it doesn't, someone should let us know. So then somebody
David,
else asked.
David,
Yep.
the only, can I just add something really quickly to audience cultivation, which I think was a great word that Ebony had used. And I'm going to use you as an example, David. I have seen you do IG lives for 200 people. I have seen you do IG lives when there are 3 people, and you still present a form of authenticity and I should say quality to your audience. I do think people leave audience way far out now that everything has been around marketing in social media. And even when people talk about curating, I'm an art history minor. So when you think of curating is about taste. It's about actually finding niche. It is actually not about trying to be like everybody else. It's quite the opposite. So I will say that one thing that I gravitate to is how people actually curate and cultivate their audience, and how long that audience stays and builds with them. Jean, you have been on the backside of Impact when people didn't even know that you were there. You were there when Angela was taking leaps and nobody knew when she was falling. David, you were there too. And then you were also there consistently to make sure that the audience that she had, literally just getting out of law school, maintained with her and was able to bring on somebody like an Ebony, or build on other individuals that are about how do you build authentically with individuals that also have been able to stand the test of time and stay consistent. So I just put that out there, that sometimes all of us don't have products that are actually about like commerce or selling. So when you're talking about social justice, when you talk about how to ensure that people can build and not necessarily need too many things like money or a degree to fulfill that, hone in on that, because that is, I think, what people are also looking for. They're not always looking to be sold on something. They want to invest in something that aligns with them. So that's also really important to just keep in mind as far as audience.
No, I appreciate that. Somebody asked a question that is almost the converse of that. The question is, my audience responds more to my product, more to me than my product. How do I shift the focus from me to the products via social media? Any thoughts about that as it relates to where we are? Go ahead, Ebony.
Yes. So, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was jumping in. Oh my God. So what I love. So I went to this Google like office seminar, and this lady was well, younger woman was talking about her social media, how she built all of these hundreds of thousands of followers, and she's a travel nurse, and she goes all around the world doing whatever travel nurses do. I don't really know, but and so look, what somebody in the back was like, you don't really have any nursing things on your page. Her entire page was kind of like the bikini at the beach, or, you know, just being out and about in the different places that she traveled in. So she was trying to make a case that people were coming to her page for all of this information, and people saw, based on her timeline and what she was actually offering, people were really coming to the page because she was a very attractive young lady. And I think that people have to understand their selling point. If you know that people are more into the content for you than whatever product you're giving, figure a way to intertwine you into the product you're selling. The one thing that I appreciate about whoever was running marketing at Apple when Steve Jobs was still alive, you never saw an Apple commercial where they talked about the product. The commercial was about the experience of what happens when this product is around. So you've got a young lady who makes this homage video about her grandfather and plays it for the grandmother on an iPad. Now you're selling me the iPad, but you never mention that in the entire commercial. Now I want that feeling, and you just tricked me to believing that having this $1,000 iPad that I have on the table right now, the biggest iPad that's the same size as my computer screen, God knows why I need both, but you just convinced me that having that thing will give me that feeling. My grandfather actually passed away. My grandmother is still here. So I got that immediately and went out and got the iPad because of that experience. So it's understanding whatever it is that piques your demographic, use it. Don't try to fit whatever you're doing into someone else's box. Don't put the square peg in the round hole. Like, it just doesn't make sense. They like you for you, sell your product through you.
And I'm gonna again agree. We probably on the same page on a lot of stuff. There are so many analytics tools and insights tools that will tell you what your audience responds to. You don't have to guess on it. They're telling you what they like based on what they engage with the most, and really what's driving people to your page. So if you know that people respond to you, use that. And I feel like that is the bridge to, it doesn't have to be a forced conversation about your product 24/7. It doesn't have to be, because that's going to not draw people to you. It's actually going to repel people, because again, it's starting to feel like this forced conversation about, I want you to buy, when actually in a relationship, especially on social, it's a lot more. It's 80% me giving, it's 20% me asking. And you have to give them what they want in order for them to even feel like, I feel comfortable enough giving my money to them. So if they are responding to you, give them more of you, because that's going to draw more people to your platform, and you have more of that opportunity to use that 20% to then say, hey, here's this thing that I'm doing, here's this thing I'm selling, and here's this opportunity for you to jump in on it. There was a Wi-Fi company that I was the head of social for, and we were sitting at the round table, and we were like trying to figure out, like, how do you push this Wi-Fi router? And talk to people about Wi-Fi routers, like, oh, I got Comcast, it's fine, I don't need that. How do we tell a different story? And everybody was like, oh, just tell them to buy a Wi-Fi router. I'm like, yeah, you don't do that. I can't do that on social. I can't just go on there and say buy a Wi-Fi router, because my answer to somebody would say, why? Like, I got one that comes with my my internet. Why would I do that? So our answer for that was, give people, like, what's the biggest pain point when it comes to Wi-Fi? When your Wi-Fi messes up. So give them a story. Tell them that story of, the generation of being able to not only protect your Wi-Fi, but being able to have consistent Wi-Fi and not having those moments where it freezes and not having those moments where, so we were able to come up with an entire story where it followed like a parent, a mother and father, from the time they brought their child home until like watching their child grow up and having good Wi-Fi and sharing those moments. And then being able to say at the end, this is what Wi-Fi is there for you as long as you have great Wi-Fi. And at no moment did we even like hold the product up or say the price or anything like that. It was just the story of, here's why you need consistency and here's the solution for you. So we gave people what we knew our audience was, which was parents that wanted to protect their Wi-Fi and wanted to have consistent Wi-Fi. We told the story that spoke to their heartstrings and pulled at it. So for the person who asked the question, just, yeah, that's.
Yeah. Ify, do you have anything specific on this?
Not really. Just make sure your product is also good. I'm not saying that yours isn't. But one thing about like these algorithms, because all of our shit hears what we're saying, is that I was trying to get a new art easel the other day. Literally 5 different easels came up in my IG ad, whatever, and they were also cheaper. So also recognize that in this space where mass consumerism also means that there are competitors that are out there doing the same thing, I would beg to say it is only your personality that if you're using on certain platforms, that is going to distinguish you versus, you know, other platforms that you're so removed from your product. It's just kind of standstill. I'm going to shout out Tabitha, which she's now getting free plugin, right? But the, you know, for a lot of people, Tabitha is, you know, she's a new face, but she's a face that's been there for a while. And for a lot of people that I know that would even consider going vegan, she is now exploring how we can just substitute here and there everyday items that we all have, and maybe a couple that you never thought of that could be tasty to recreate dishes that we're so used to. But anybody who watches her, it is her personality. I'm not doing any of those recipes, and it's really the viewership that has gotten her signed by CAA. It wasn't necessarily what she was trying to do. It was just because she was so authentic that her viewership was just going off the charts, right? So I would say, first of all, your product may not be the only thing that you are quote unquote useful for. You may actually have a personality that outshines your product, but also make sure your product is really good. And you should have a plan beyond your product because other people are making widgets. That's just the world we're in. So that's all I have to add.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm also thinking about the point of identifying your lane, but being okay sort of swerving and figuring out as you work with your audience over time, what they're asking for, what you can provide, and how you find that fit. And so as we land this plan, I want to invite each of you to sort of reflect on your experience over time. I'll start with Eugene and maybe ask you to specifically think about some of the lessons learned with Angela's career, and maybe now more intimately with the NAACP. But what are some of the biggest lessons that you would share with people who might not be able to see long-term or long range, right? And who are still sort of struggling with the algorithms and trying to find their footing?
Oh, I don't know if I said it loudly or if people hear me, but Cardi B is probably the greatest case study of what we're talking about right now. Cardi B was authentic AF on her social platforms while working in a strip club and doing what she felt she had to do to, you know, pay bills and help her family and all of that. And just offered Cardi B. And through that, Cardi B, and it's so funny to me, like you watch, so I hate reality TV. I hate it. I do not watch it. I don't participate. But you look at shows like Love and Hip Hop, and you I see it. But you look at Love and Hip Hop and you see who's able to really benefit off of that show in regards to a career that has nothing to do with that show. And so what people didn't realize, and of course I paid attention to because I'm a social media strategist, was Cardi B got on Love and Hip Hop because Cardi B was already popping on social media. And through that, like, you know, she might have been toying with the music, but somebody, and I forgot the guy's name that's in her crew now, and her manager, I want to say his name is like Brooklyn something, but he recognized that impact and then really pushed her to the music. And because she came into Love and Hip Hop, not needing Love and Hip Hop, after like 2 seasons, she was able to say, this is toxic, I'm out of here. And then goes on to drop an amazing album and take off. And so for people that are looking at how to engage, one, be authentic. There are billions of people in the world. Guaranteed there are at least 1 million people who think like you in certain aspects, who feel like you in certain aspects, who need whatever it is you're selling, period. At least 1 million people right now are feeling what you're feeling and into what you're into. So creating a robust catalog of your authentic content is probably the best thing that you can do. And I think to the point that we were making earlier, people care about the numbers before they care about what I think her example was the 80-20. People care about the 20 more than they care about the 80. And it's like, yo, you're doing this backwards. Why do you want a lot of followers and you don't have a lot of content? You want to make a lot of money, but the product that you're pushing out, you're not pushing it out enough for me to even want to invest. So my thing is, when I go to somebody's page and I have people who are just individuals who will ask me to evaluate their page. And when I go to people's page and I'm like, yo, you got 3 videos on here. Like, that's it. That's all you're bringing to the table, and you're wondering why your stuff isn't moving, why your stuff isn't taking off. And so that's the one thing is definitely be organic and be authentic and honor, again, and I keep saying it, honor your gifts. So the conversation that we were having a couple of minutes ago about the person who says that their product doesn't get as much love as them. Yo, you might be the gift. And what you bring to the table might be the gift for you to have all these other things. Cardi B's personality is the gift. She makes really good music, but the gift is her. The music doesn't have her as a Bernie Sanders surrogate. The Cardi B being able to excel authentically as her is what allows her to get these Pepsi commercials and all this other stuff. So I just really think that, and I think Ebony said it earlier, stop worrying so much about the numbers. That stuff will happen if you're consistent. Did I answer that? Because
I most definitely. Let's stay in that space. Iffy, similar question to you, just lessons learned, especially want you to talk about some of the current projects, in particular, the data collection and lab thinking, if appropriate. If not, you're gonna go somewhere else, feel free to go there.
No, yeah, my mind is all over the place. So for those that are interested in, say, like this new space that everyone is calling social impact, because that is an evolving space for folks that started off in that field. That is not what we called it. And we struggled with if there was a space that was a hybrid of having mass attention for these social justice issues. And over time, what I realized that as we had mentioned before, the goal for me has shifted, maybe because I just haven't been in this space a little bit, and I still value those that are able to galvanize large groups of people to sign a petition or to send a text message and find these mobilization efforts, this hybrid, how we use tech and voice to create some type of a strategy. For me, I mean, even as a person of faith, I don't believe that you need a lot of people to make huge impact. So I'm always invested in who are the people, if it's 14, if it's 12, if it's 2, who are the people that I can capture, and how can we as a unit do something that actually gets more eyes and attention for a shared and common goal. David, as you mentioned, we're working on a project that literally started as a response about not quite a month ago to the fact that statistics were coming up around Black and Brown, but specifically Black bodies as it related to COVID. As Jean accurately mentioned with the quote, we already knew that when the world gets a cold, Black people get pneumonia, but we also knew what people don't know is that there were studies that showed that Black people of any other race were the most concerned the earliest than any other community, which also shows me that as a people, we are very well into trends. We knew that this was not just a Wuhan virus. We know that people travel. We know that what happens in other places of color impacts Black people eventually. And so it was very interesting to me that the Pew Research report showed that Black people were taking this as from seriously to very seriously all the way back in late December, early January. So why does that matter now? That means that when other people that don't look like us, that are not connected to our communities, are the ones reporting on what we are experiencing, that's a problem for me. And so the movement was not necessarily about selling a product. The movement was about how people see that their voice is important and their individual narrative is important, because we're not monolithic and we're not just a nobody behind this percentage sign as far as the number of people that are impacted. So COVID While Black started from obviously the trend. Again, this is about knowing trends, that while Black is something that we've all used in different spaces. Now there's jogging while Black, unfortunately, because of what happened with Ahmaud. But that in itself as a marketing tool used in many places, for-profit spaces, how can we use While Black and connect it to something that we can all relate to and not feel the pressure of saying we have to stay within a time frame, but just allowing it to flow and allowing people, whether they work as a gas attendant or whether they drive a bus or whether they're a high profile individual, or whether they're in the UK, as we had some people respond from non-US spaces, how can we create this space that allows for people to say, I'm not just a statistic, this is what I'm going through, but also these are some policy areas that I care about. And as you know, David, we also create space for people to acknowledge those that have transitioned or those that are ill. So we can also look at social media and what's trending very differently. And I just want to end by saying I appreciate you, David, for also recognizing the opportunity of how we can evolve, because sometimes we can get so stuck to our product that we don't want to evolve. And now that we'll be launching another version of COVID While Black and Queer, how can we also allow for those that are really forgotten in the cracks to allow themselves to also speak about their realities instead of other people speaking for them? So I've just gotten maybe too comfortable with evolving. My parents just want grandkids and they want me to make a lot of money. But right now I'm really just enjoying how community is informing me about my work, not necessarily the other way around.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Ebony, I'm going to invite you to respond to that as well. I want to say thank you publicly for riding with me in my leadership at the NBJC since almost day one. And in particular, Ebony is the creator of Love Wins Wednesday, which has become my favorite thing to do on social media in an attempt to normalize queer love and LGBTQ issues. So Ebony, I invite you to offer any reflections, maybe even some of the lessons that I have helped you learn or you've helped me learn while I learned the hard way. And then my last question to you all, Ebony wants you to answer this and then we'll go in reverse order and end where we began with Iffy, is what resources would you recommend for people? Are there apps, are there publications, are there podcasts or things that you all turn to that you want to share? Ebony, the floor is yours.
Okay. So really quickly, doubling again on what Jean said, I think authenticity is the biggest thing that our generation, not even our generation, just this social media generation is missing. That's really the secret sauce, is really being authentic in who you are. And I'm proof of this right here, because this wasn't planned. This wasn't planned for me to be on here like this, but I jumped on here, and I think that that's one of the things that I also always try to tell people is be okay with being vulnerable, with showing up in a way that you wouldn't necessarily want to, because that's what people respond to. People are responding more to you being authentic and being vulnerable and saying, here I am in all my forehead wrinkles and I don't know where my glasses are, so y'all probably don't look the way that you really do. I don't know because I can't see, but I'm here. And I think that that's the important thing, is stop being so scared to show up imperfectly, because you're really shying away for an opportunity to speak your piece. Also, using your platform and being okay with being the bread. And when I say being the bread, there's a lot of people who are scared to do things on social because a million people are doing them. But if you walk down the bread aisle, do you know how many brands are on the bread aisle? It's a million brands. There's a ways that you can be yourself, sell your products, sell yourself, sell your services, make sure that you are getting your message across and still get the bread and be the bread. So be okay with being the bread. Use your platform the way that you need to use your platform, because your community is going to see you. They're going to hug onto you, and they're going to be your champions, which leads to the other point of making sure you foster your community, because the community who is there for you at the bottom is going to be the community that's going to fight for you the hardest. They're going to be the loudest, and they are going to check people in comments. They're going to check people on blogs. They're going to check people on message boards when you can't be there to do it. So foster your community. Tell them thank you. Get in the comments. Respond to them. Send them DMs. Tell them thank you. Watch their stories. Little things like that will help your community grow. And then one of my biggest things is making sure that you are targeting and using ads. I don't care if it's $50 a month. Use ads, because they are there and you can actually target the people that you want to reach. It's not a guessing game. You can say that you want them to have gone to Hampton. You want them to drive a Toyota. You can target down to every single thing. Use the ads, because $50 can get you, in some cases, a couple thousand people that you're able to see and reach with your message. So make sure you're doing that. And the last thing, I use this as a parody to y'all's president, but make social media social again, please, because I hate it. I hate the fact that I go on to people's thing and they post stuff and there's no comment. There's comments on there, nobody's replying back to them. There's questions, nobody's answering the questions. Social media is meant to be social. It's not meant to be a place to have one-sided conversations. It's meant to be a place to be social. So make social media social again. And that's it. That's it for me.
Gene, resources, tools, tips of the trade.
I guess I feel like that now I get to double down on what Ebony said. I think that one, all of that was spot on. The only caveat I would say to the using ads is make sure that your landing page is worth me clicking this link. Whatever your ad is, it will lead to either a product, and Ife said this earlier, your product, I'm going to your product, and your product better be good, because like the one thing that's amazing about people is somebody will write a bad review before they write a good one. They'll get some good product, won't say a word about it, and it'll just be, I bought it, I like it, I ain't saying nothing. But get a bad product and want to go crazy with things about how horrible that thing was. So make sure that if you're spending money on these ads, that land on whatever you're trying to get me to land on, it is worth me landing. Learn how to do things on your phone. For anybody that's trying to move in this space, I know that a laptop is very safe and it feels comfortable, and you got all your different files and folders and different things that you're capable of doing, but learn how to do things on your phone. David will tell you, I can whip, edit, cut everything on my phone in real time, and it's become so helpful for me because I'll have a client that needs something to go out immediately and I'm not home. You know what I mean? I'm out and about. I might be in these streets. I might be at happy hour or whatever. And so I have been able to find all of the different apps that I need and make sure that you find apps and play with them. Like I told David about some apps I don't mind sharing, I use an app called Video Leap. Hey, who's that cutie?
That's the boss.
But yeah. No, it's all good, man. Look, and so that's the thing that we love about this, like just being organically you. Like that right there, that clip, if we post that, that's gonna get more views than this entire conversation.
Right.
But
Because Al is the
like
boss.
just, you know, just I use video, I use an app called Video Leap to cut and edit videos on the fly. I use an app called Over to cut and edit posters and flyers and graphics on the fly. Make sure that you have what you need in that handheld device that's in your hand more than anything else. Right now, because a lot of people are at home, podcasts. Find 2 or 3 podcasts that are talking about either what you're selling, how to sell, social media, or what you love and want to talk about. Make enough information to where whatever your commentary is, if you're somebody that just wants to be an on-air personality and talk and do IG lives or whatever, make sure that you're giving yourself enough neutral information to where you're able to, you know, have first opinions on a single subject matter. The one thing that I learned in like debate class was, in debate, you have to be able to debate both sides. Whether you believe in it or not, you have to be able to do, you know, both things. And last thing I will say is, like my sweatshirt is a great example of what the world is about right now. Shouts out to my brother D Nice. D Nice hit 6,000 views one day, and I was watching him spin. And I'm just watching. I'm enjoying the music. I'm watching how the things go. But I'm looking at the comment section, and I'm like, okay, so Puff is in here, and then you know, a lot of the behind the scenes high level people. I'm like, okay, they're in there, and it's a blue check festival in there. And so I literally, he logs off. It literally, like 6,000 may not be a high mark for people, but I saw what was happening. And I was like, I called him and I was like, yo, you got something. Like, this thing is going to be huge because, and to the point we made earlier, that influencer marketing is so much stronger than anything you can pay for. So if everybody in here has a blue check, and a blue check means you're verified, and in the social spaces, it just means you're somebody, that all of those blue checks have groups of people who want to be in a room with them, who want to be like them, who want to be whatever it is that they are presenting to be. And so a room full of blue checks means that tomorrow, all of the people who are concerned with where the blue check folks went will be in this room. And literally the next day is when he hit 100,000 plus, and Michelle Obama and a whole bunch of other people were in the room. And so I say that to say, pay attention to what's going on in your sphere, and don't depend on the numbers, because someone who has 50,000 followers, but who gets 10,000 in engagement is more valuable than a person who has 1 million followers, but can only get 500 likes and 200 in engagement. So it's really, pay attention to the trends, but also pay attention to what it means to have certain elements around you. And just lastly, man, be yourself. Honor the fact that betting on you authentically is the only way to win in life. And you know, as you move forward, just make sure that what you're offering or what you want to offer is something that you can consistently do happily. If you cannot do whatever it is that you're doing, whatever you're talking about, whatever you're selling, if you can't do it at a consistent level and remain happy, you're not operating in your gift, and you're not doing something that's sustainable.
Yeah. If the last words go to you.
So let me say a little less, because I think some of the products have been raised. Obviously, a lot of people use Canva, right? And so that's also another tool. And I would also say that while a lot of apps are out there for free, especially if you're trying to get a little bit more creative, invest in an app that's at a low, maybe just a low monthly amount. Go do use the trial era. I've just had fun just playing around with the different ways that you can do things on your phone, as Jean had mentioned. So, you know, this is definitely a time to just, you know, gamble on yourself, gamble on your creativity, and see where it lands. So that's, you know, that's something that I've learned is like how to increase the investment in myself. So invest in yourself and also recognize it's okay to pay yourself as you are trying to do that. I do think that anyone can be an influencer, but you don't have to be an influencer to have impact. And so one of the things that I think we should think about, right? As far as how we use tools, I'm actually really excited doing two things. Number one, using hashtags to find new talent that I've never seen before, and also playing around and making somebody else an influencer. So I'll frequently use my platform to just shout out people that are doing dope stuff. So my shout out as of late has been going to Miss Danielle Cook. She is at Oh Happy Danny, which is OHHAPPYDANI. And I love the way she's been using her space. And she's actually not a non-influencer. She has 29.5 thousand followers on IG, but I actually first saw her on LinkedIn because she was actually creating graphics, if we're honest with ourselves, and David and I kind of overlap in the spaces that we're in. I have a lot of, I use LinkedIn for a lot of the equity, diversity, and inclusion work that I do. Speaking of authentic, that is authentically my dog. And one of the things that I'm realizing that's becoming frustrating is the inability to talk about race when it comes to moments like this, the inability to be in the moment with what many of us are experiencing. And I also recognize that sometimes I also kind of get a chuckle with people that are like, F this 9 to 5, and they come in like, you know, F that, I may work at Exxon, but I'm Black, my truckers, and you know, they're going in. Danielle Cook has this interesting way of using illustrations. She's an illustrator, but she's a social justice illustrator to bring more people into the conversation without feeling like she has to educate people that are just on the outs of what we're experiencing. I've been sharing a lot of work that she's been doing. I also want to shout out the National Association to Advocate for Black Birth, to advance Black birth. They are _NAABB, also really dope with illustrations. But to be honest with you, if you put in hashtag Black illustrators, hashtag social justice or social impact illustrators, for those of, just because I was looking for graphics, there's some great things that can come up from that. I also want to highlight that there are a lot of people that have been impacted disproportionately because of COVID. So this is also a really great time to incorporate those that are creatives and find ways to connect them to the work that you're doing, find ways, you know, Ebony and Jean and David, you all have, you know, a lot of people in your network that have this blue check. So what are the ways that we can also merge worlds that never would have maybe worked with each other before? So I also want to state that one of the tools that I think we should be looking at is how we make, again, everyday people expand their impact and their influence, because we all have influence, and oftentimes we also have to make sure that we are pulling people along as we're trying to make deeper impact.
I think that's right. Suzette Robotham, our dear friend, said you don't have to be an influencer to have impact. Say that, lead from your seat. And with that, I want to thank each of you, Iffy Ike of Black Policy Lab and Pink Cornrows, Groovy Jean of Groovy G Productions, also a DJ on the side, and you, Ebony, and the Baby Boss L of Persona. Thank you all for pivoting with me as we were nimble in responding to what we felt the community needed today. And also thank you for my 4 takeaways, which are to 1, be authentic, 2, to stay in your lane, but be okay with the swerve, 3, to nurture your community, to invest in building with your audience over time, And then the last one is where we started, and that's to stay angry. So with that, I hope that this has been helpful to others as it has been to me. We have established this record. This video will continue to be accessible to others. I hope that each of you stay safe and hear me when I say thank you for all that you do, not only for me and NBJC, but for our community more generally. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you to everyone who joined us as well.